All right, we are live.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Sunday morning Atheist Republic Hangout. I am Makisha, and today with us so far we have Ali, Armin, Courtney, Ray, Todd, and myself. Today we are going to be talking about something that has stirred quite a lot of feelings in the Atheist Republic group, on forums, in our team. People have lots of thoughts about it. We'll see how many different thoughts we have with us here today. And that is Everybody Draw Muhammad Day. And I'm going to have Armin give us a little bit of background about why this came up for us in particular, and maybe share a little bit of the feedback we've been getting. And then we can talk about maybe a little bit of the history. Armin, if you want to talk about the history of maybe where this comes from, that's great, or I can go into it. But in particular, I want to hear about what has been stirring in the Atheist Republic community to start off with.
Well, I'm going to talk about how the issue in Islam itself, but I think Ali would be able to talk about the event in Atheist Republic and why so many people are against this among atheists themselves, because she's wrote a blog about it and she's hosting the event, so I think, and she's been reviewing all the comments from everybody's side. But from within Islam itself, I see that a lot of atheists also have a misunderstanding about that. Some atheists that are defending drawing Muhammad, I keep saying that, oh, why is it offensive to draw something that doesn't even exist? I think they're confusing Muhammad with Jesus kind of arguments. Muhammad, most historians believe that he exists. We're not 100% sure, but Muhammad did kind of exist. Well, we kind of think he existed based on evidence and stuff, but we're not 100% sure. But he probably did exist. And he's not a god. You know, Muslims don't consider Muhammad a god. The drawing of Muhammad is considered blasphemous in Islam because in Islam you're only supposed to worship God, and depicting Muhammad as could basically has a risk of making Muslims worship Muhammad as a god, which is the only the unforgivable sin in Islam. The greatest crime of all is shirk, which is basically associating anybody than Allah with God. Even Muhammad is never to be worshipped. Originally this was a rule, not because it was like offensive, but because you're not supposed to, you should basically focus on worshiping Allah. Another thing is that these kind of demands by Muslim for other non-Muslims to follow their rules is very new in Islamic history. Throughout the Islamic, even when we had the Islamic Empire, when they were in power under the Arabs, under the Turks, this demand to follow Islamic rules was for most of the time only for Muslims. During the Abbasid, dynasty, and during the Ottoman Empire and everything, Christians and Jews lived under Islamic, rule, and they had their own rules, and they didn't have to follow Islamic rule. This is a very strange demand, and it's very new when Muslims are demanding that, non-Muslims don't drink alcohol in their, and other stuff like that. So it doesn't have that much historical base. But some people argue that Muhammad himself at one point demanded that some people that offended him to be killed when he went back and when he invaded Mecca. So some people see there's some basis for it. But anyways, I'm going to stop the religious debate, and I'm going to let Ali talk about the reaction of atheists to these cartoons.
I just have one quick question first before we move away from that. Armin, is the edict to not have images of Muhammad, is that universal across the sects of Islam?
Yeah, and it's actually much broader than, well, Well, within Islam, you're not supposed to basically, within Sunni Islam at least, you're not supposed to draw any body, like any human being, because that's basically an act of creation. That's why Islamic art is mostly just, calligraphy, and, it doesn't have any drawings of people. But drawing of Muhammad himself you know, is risky, because now you're in much greater risk of, worshiping something other than Allah. But I would say, yes, both in Sunni and Shia Islam, you don't show the face of Muhammad. And within Shia Islam, that rule applies to the 12 Imams as well. Even when we had images of Muhammad or Imams in our textbooks, in school books in Iran, I'm from Iran. Their faces were basically covered with lights or something, but you're never supposed to show their faces.
Okay,
so,
cool.
Yeah.
Thanks for that. That was good. So, Ali, why don't you just walk us through how this got started this year? What got it started and how it's been going?
Okay, so we actually just wanted to start this to raise awareness of ever since I've been in the Atheist Republic, we've always posted pictures of Muhammad, of Jesus, Vishnu. It never has occurred to us that it's just something that we couldn't do. So it was actually a thread in one of our private groups that encouraged me to start a contest to draw Muhammad, because some of the comments kind of shocked me coming from atheists. It's disrespectful, it's offensive, and that's just not true. I mean, while some people can take offense to it, obviously it's not something that we should be focusing on as a reason to not do something. So I started the contest. I thought it'd be a lot of fun. We're giving away a t-shirt. We're giving away a meme. A meme's going to be made of it as well, with the person's alias or name, whichever they want, whichever the winner wants. And the whole thing, Courtney kind of touched on this in the beginning before we started recording, is that if everybody is drawing Muhammad, then they can't come after all of us. And that's exactly what Draw Muhammad Day started as. I don't know if everyone here is familiar with the South Park episode where they were going to try to shut down Family Guy for airing Muhammad because there were threats and things of that nature. So somebody steps up and says, hey, instead of targeting Family Guy and forcing them to not draw Muhammad and air Muhammad, why don't we all draw pictures of Muhammad, because they can't kill us all? And that's kind of the mentality that started the Draw Muhammad Day. What we're doing is we're doing an international Draw Muhammad Day, so it's the exact same premise, but it is a little bit different. And we're encouraging people from all over the world, not just the Western civilization, but all over the world. If you're in a safe place to do so and not get caught, absolutely draw Muhammad. I don't think that fear should be an issue here. I don't think fear should be something that holds people back. I don't think that offense should be something that holds something back. In the words of Stephen Fry, you find that offensive, so fucking what? Offense should never be something that we stop ourselves from doing. We need to push that. Why are people offended? I'm an artist, so I guess it's kind of common for me to have that mentality. If it offends you, let's figure out why it offends you. Let's figure out why something, one particular item or image or picture can bring that kind of emotion to you. So to me, as an artist, as an atheist, as an advocate, drawing Muhammad and seeing all of these different reactions is just so fascinating.
And what are some of the, it's kind of hard because we get so many really extreme statements by all kinds of people, but they do often tend to come from Muslims, it seems like, just in response to things. You know, threats to rape our sisters and things like that. That's pretty common in Atheist Republic, so it's kind of hard to maybe answer this, but what are some of the more, maybe a better question is this, what are some of the more surprising responses you've heard from atheists in response to this?
To me, the biggest surprise has been it's disrespectful. Because as Armin was kind of touching on in the very beginning of this, while Muhammad might have been a real person, we don't know. We don't really see him as a real prophet. We don't see him as some sort of holy figure. Why is it offensive? Why is it disrespectful? So to me, hearing that from atheists, that has been the most shocking response. And we've heard a lot of really, really good arguments for not drawing Muhammad. My whole thing is it's exposure. And we have a long history of how exposure is beneficial, how exposure helps reduce anxiety, reduce any of the social stigmas that we have against things. If we're constantly exposed to something, its effect is constantly reduced. So that's kind of the mentality I have on Draw Muhammad Day. Not only are we all drawing Muhammad, so not one of us is a target, but we're also exposing the world to, hey, look, we drew Muhammad. Nothing's happening here. I didn't die. You didn't die. You know, and the Muslims can see, I saw a picture of Muhammad. I'm not worshiping Muhammad more than I'm worshiping Allah. And that kind of exposure, to me, I think is going to help a lot of people. So the arguments I've heard against it is I just don't feel that's effective. And that's frustrating to me because we're atheists, we're used to rational thinking. I mean, atheists just don't believe in God, and I get that. But in the social circles that I run in, we're used to rational thinking. We're used to using logic, not using emotion, not using feelings. One of the most common things we say is if you want support and good feedback from your feelings, turn to wine and pantyhose. There's your support. There's your good feeling. So don't try to use an argument saying, I just don't feel that's effective. Great. Exposure has been proven effective. So all these different arguments I'm getting from atheists, these have been very fascinating, but those are probably the best.
I think we had a lot of great pushback in the group, in our group, when this topic came up and whether or not we wanted to discuss it. So I'm gonna try to pull some of those comments out. But I wanted to talk just a little bit more about kind of the history of this. Just a little. Ali touched on it. It was in May of 2010, May 20th, actually, 2010, and it did start with South Park. I think the episode was called 201 or something like that, and there was a lot of death threats made against the animators because they depicted Muhammad in this episode. And so in response to that, there was a cartoonist named Molly Norris from Seattle who started this Draw Muhammad Day. And basically it was, just as Ali said, if we all do it, then they can't get us all. In response to all these, these death threats that were coming out. And I also wanted to come back to a point that Armin made, which I think is interesting, that we're not just talking about images of Muhammad that are, I don't know, Muhammad having sex with a goat or something like these. It's just images, drawings of Muhammad. I mean, whatever they might be, but so that alone, just the image. And how do we know? Like, some of these images just look like some generic guy with a beard who happens to look like he might be from somewhere in the Middle East, So what is it about that, the image just being there? And Armin, what you said I thought was really interesting, that why do we have to follow those rules? Why does anybody who's not Muslim have to follow those rules? That's, if you don't think drawing Muhammad's a good idea, then don't do it, right? We're not making you do it. So those are some of the things that I've found interesting, some of the, just that people are so prickly about this all of a sudden, and it's not just the safety thing. And I know it's not all of a sudden, but it seems to ramp up at certain times versus others. So I'm interested to hear right now, I would just kind of want to open it up to some people who maybe have seen or heard some of the feedback on this. Have you participated? Have you gotten personal feedback? And you can just raise a finger, wave a hand, nod your head, whatever, and I'll call on you, so we don't have people talking all at once. Ray, was that a hand? Your finger was out of the screen. Ray, you can unmute yourself if you have something to say.
All right then, everybody, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so it's basically on my personal experience. I was in an Islamic elementary school. All went up until my senior high school. I was in mostly Islamic school. So like as the widest, the most perfect human prophet ever. And every single tale that I've been told by them are mostly about the good deeds of Muhammad, but I never heard anything about the bad sides. And I myself am wondering, even until now, which part of Islam that do not allow another humans to be drawn, to be made like.
I think we're losing. Are we having connection problems with Ray? Because we need to.
You see, here in my area, it is.
Yeah, sorry, Ray.
Yeah.
You keep cutting out. So just because it's hard to hear what you're saying, and I think you probably have a lot of great things to say. I'm just gonna move on to Ali for a minute, and maybe your connection issues might resolve. Sometimes it's just a bandwidth problem. So, Ali, go. Actually, you know what? First, I think Courtney had her hand up first. I'm gonna go to Courtney and then to Ali, please.
Yeah, so I did actually participate in the contest, and I posted the picture that I made on my fan page. And it's not a bad picture. It just shows Muhammad with a rainbow turban. So to me, it's not offensive because, you know, it shows that Muhammad is supporting the LGBT community. But I had some feedback that people were saying, why are you doing that? That is just so wrong. Like, you're going to get in trouble. You're going to get death threats. And, you know, I mean, I can't. The best thing about me leaving religion was leaving the fear behind. And I'm not going to go back to that fear just because somebody says that I have to fear it because I drew something on a piece of, not even on paper, on a computer. You know, like, as far as like atheists, and I know that Ali said, and Makisha, I think you said that atheists are saying that it's disrespectful. But it's disrespectful to Christians to make fun of their Christ. But atheists do that all the time. So why is it different between Christians and Muslims to do offensive things to them?
Yeah, that's it's. I think that's a lot of. There's a lot of perplexed people about this issue, and I've been trying to read where some of the strong feelings are coming from Muslims, and it's so emotional. It's very difficult to really wrap your head around it. So I'm going to go to Ali, and then actually Ray, I'm going to give just a couple more clicks, and we'll be back to you. So let's go Ali, and then Todd.
Okay, so something else that I've seen kind of in the argument of the Draw Muhammad issue is the disrespect towards Islam and the disrespect towards Muslims, not only the extremists, but also the moderate Muslims as well. It's very disrespectful. They're peaceful, and they say, let's leave them alone. But something that needs to be pointed out is that whenever you criticize an idea, whether it be with satire, like Draw Muhammad, or whether it be with outright just vigorous words, attacks, emotions, people are going to react in many different ways. I quit. One of the things that got me thinking so much about my beliefs was satire. It was indeed satire. I would feel so guilty looking at or laughing at a picture of Jesus in a compromised position or something like that. I would feel like I was being evil, like I would go to hell. And I would laugh at these images at first because, yeah, they were funny. And that kind of got me thinking about my own beliefs. And for some reason, it's just different when it comes to Muhammad, and it's different when it comes to Muslims. And I think that it is because of the indoctrination. It is much different in other parts of the world. But one of the strange, I wouldn't say strangest, but I guess the most profound, because it really has me thinking a lot, of arguments about drawing Muhammad. The whole purpose is that you're not supposed to draw him so that they don't start worshiping Muhammad more than Allah, or they don't start loving Muhammad more than Allah because they can put a face to the name. So they demand everybody not do it. And it's kind of the same thing with their women. They don't want to be sexually aroused by women. Let's cover them up with burqas. It's kind of like a lack of self-control issue, and they're forcing that on everybody else rather than saying, hey, let me go ahead and take some self-control here. Let me love Allah more than Muhammad. Instead, they say, let's cover him up. Let's cover it up. We can't have sex. Let's cover it up. And I think that also is a point that needs to be thrown out there, and another good reason why we should continue to do what we're doing.
I think that is actually a really good point, Ali, that you make about if this is something that you want to avoid doing because it feels disrespectful to you, or you want to make sure that you're protecting your beliefs or whatever, that's fine. You know, obviously we're not going to make you draw Muhammad. We're not going to necessarily make you look at it. And this is all on an atheist website and an atheist Facebook page. If you don't want to see it, you clearly know what to avoid. You know, so that's definitely a perplexing thing to me as well. It reminds me a little bit of in ultra-Orthodox Jewish communities. It's very similar. They want people, if you're a woman and you're walking by the neighborhood, you know, they want you to be dressed a certain way. And it's like, you know, this is a city sidewalk. Dress however I want within the boundaries of the current laws on the books. You know, it's just because you don't want your men looking at something that shouldn't really give you the right to. I mean, you can certainly huff and puff and yell, but as far as, you know, what you think you have rights to, that definitely is a whole other thing. Let's see. Let's go to, excuse me, Todd, and then we're going to go to Jesse, and then we'll try Ray again because he moved back to the street. Poor Ray. Okay, Todd, hit us.
Actually, Makisha, if it's all right, I'd like to defer to Jesse, and I'll go after him. I think he's got a point for the other side, and I'd like to follow him if that's okay.
Okay, great. Go ahead, Jesse. We'd love to hear what you have to say.
How's it going, guys? Hey, so basically, I just wanted to start out. So my side isn't to disrespect Islam or anything. You know, I really could care less, honestly. What my argument is more about the safety side. You know, I don't have a problem drawing religious people. I don't have a problem with free speech, and I don't have a problem of people doing things that are offensive on purpose. What I do have a problem is when somebody has taken a life because of someone being offensive. That is where the line should be drawn. You know, they call them terrorists because they invoke terror in the hearts of people, and you don't know if you're going to be the target. I know that a lot of us have been given anonymity from the internet, and the biggest problem that I fear with this is anyone can find anyone on the internet. That is not a problem. You can find anything. All you really need is a name and a city. That's it. And that's what scares me. The biggest thing about this is I just don't want to see people get hurt. You know, I'm calling for caution. I'm wanting people to be smart about what kind of information they have, not only on their Facebook pages, but also with what they might share in the picture. If they're bragging about it or anything that will undo their anonymity, that is the biggest thing. Because if anybody was to get hurt doing this, I don't know what any of us would do. I don't know. And, you know, one of the scariest parts for us is none of us know who would be targeted. I know that you guys were saying that, okay, you know, a lot of people will be doing this so they can't target just one. Well, as we've seen with the last few weeks, we know that people have been getting killed over these things. I believe in Bangladesh, 3 atheist bloggers have recently, and I mean, it's a Muslim country, and basically, it's getting bad, and so it's just, we know that they're not shy of doing these things, and that's basically all I want to make sure is just that we're smart about it, and everything. I hadn't actually seen any of the arguments of any atheists saying that they were offensive, but also I tried to kind of stay away from it because I wanted to keep my arguments fresh. So I don't know, but yeah, I mean, basically what it boils down to, I just think that we just need to be safe about it. We need to be responsible about it. And if we are going to do this, just do it the safe and smart way. I'd rather be safe than sorry. And that's really about it.
Thank you, Todd. And I think I don't think any of us obviously wants to see anybody get hurt. Hopefully that doesn't happen. If we were to play that out, however, to the worst possible end, you know, you asked what would we do or how we would feel if somebody got hurt. That's worth thinking about, and maybe we can touch on that as well, and what people think about that. Todd, you had a response to that. I also, because this hits pretty close for Ray as far as the safety issue, I'd like him to maybe respond to that a little bit as well before we move on, and if anybody else has any response to that. Go ahead, Todd.
Your point is well taken about safety. I completely am on board with that. There's been a lot that's been said here, and I think our very intelligent, lovely ladies have made a lot of good points about, you know, how much responsibility do I bear for your inability to control your own passions, urges, and thoughts. You know, it's almost as if morality is being crowdsourced a little bit on this view, and I can understand and appreciate why people would want to be sensitive to, I guess, the more what I would see as the more reasonable of the two alternatives that you don't want to. You know, I can understand why they would not want to have a drawing of a venerated figure of any kind, because they wouldn't want there to be any displacement between as far as the object of their devotion. But at the same time, it's you know, it's not very easy to rationally justify that. Even the word desecration is a very emotionally loaded word. And at the very basis of it, it's just simply to take something that someone views as sacred and to treat it as common, or to profane it. You know, the old English sense of it was to treat as common that which is above commonality. But you know, and from the safety standpoint, you know, I understand what you're saying, and I do appreciate those concerns. However, for a basis for this, and I can appreciate the reasons that Ali gave for having this and for wanting to promote this contest, and why I think it's a fantastic idea, is if you go back to the analogy I've heard before, somebody puts a gun to your head and says, you know, give me your wallet or I'm going to kill you. You know, if you don't hand them your wallet, you haven't committed suicide. You know, you're not forcing them to pull the trigger on you just because they've made a threat. You know, so I view this as much the same way. If there's going, you know, if you do this thing that I don't like, then I'm going to react violently to you. You know, I'm not choosing violence. If you choose to react violently, I don't bear any responsibility for that. That's on you. Just as You know, if I don't, you know, if the ladies don't dress head to toe, covered everything, they don't bear any responsibility for whatever thoughts run through your head. That's on you. And I just, you know, personally, from my standpoint, and not only rationally, but also it strikes an emotional chord with me, and I'll freely acknowledge that I don't feel that I should bear any responsibility for challenging an idea that you have. If I, you know, as far as the result, whatever emotional consequences you experience as a result of me asking a question, I'm not the bad guy for asking the question, and that's not something that I'm not your enemy for simply thinking differently and having a different mind that operates in a different way. If you want to discuss it and you really want to show yourself to be a person of peace, then let's speak peacefully. If you want to threaten violence, then that's on you, and I have every justification to call you a liar to your face or in front of the world, and I won't hesitate to do so. So consequences be damned, really. Like you said, you know, I'm easy to find, but you know, it's a very emotional thing, and so I can understand the reaction from the community on both sides. You know, they want to exercise caution, but at the same time, you know, there's very much an emotional middle finger component to it that personally I can get behind. And I kind of dig that. So, but I do understand that these things hit people differently. You know, but there are overarching concerns and underlying things that I think are at the heart of it. And one of those is, how much responsibility am I supposed to bear for your belief system, and how bound am I by your preferences? And I think you know, and I don't think that I haven't heard an adequate response to that from Christians, from Muslims, from any other religious group, as to why, you know, my life should be governed by the preferences of your particular group. I'm open to discussion and conversation, but until I'm convinced, it's going to take a lot more than your emotional experience to convince me. So, you know, let's talk about it, and let's, you know, try not to kill each other in the process. So that's kind of my cent and a half on that.
Thank you, Todd. And a lot of people, a lot of the argument, and we can talk about this as well after we continue with Ray and Armin, and Courtney, I believe, also wants to chime in. But a lot of what I've heard that comes essentially saying, if you don't like Islam, fine. If you want to disagree with their ideas, fine. But there is a line, and there's a line where it goes from disagreement and maybe even argument or debate into being intentionally inflammatory. The word mean is often used in this context. You're being mean. You know that this bothers Muslims a lot. You don't have to draw Muhammad and put it out there publicly, and yet you're doing it on purpose to poke the bear, you know, to whatever, to be mean, to be intentionally insulting. And that's not something that this is what the kind of things I'm hearing, that's not something that we as kind, respectful, humanist, atheists, whatever, want to do, to just be mean on purpose. So that's something that I would like to, that's something maybe more often than anything else that I hear from other atheists, particularly atheists who would call themselves humanists, atheists who work in a lot of interfaith communities. Now, I personally will not be drawing Muhammad. That's not my groove. That's not how I provoke thought and conversation personally. I don't have a problem with anybody else doing it. And I do work a lot in interfaith communities and things like that, so for me it would not be helpful to what I do. But that said, I don't have a problem with it. So I would like to, and I know I'm kind of skirting around and then coming back around, and I'm sorry for that, but I wanted to touch on that before we lost that little trail. And then I'd like to circle back around to that after I talk to Ray about the safety issue. So Ray, first of all, if you have any thoughts from what you were trying to share before when we kind of got cut off, please do that. And then I would also like to hear your thoughts about the safety issue, because I think it's a little bit more real for you than it is for us here in North America, to put it mildly. So I'd like to hear some of your thoughts about that. We might not be getting any sound from you. I was worried about that because you're not muted.
No, wait. It's my fault. I'll fix it. There you go.
Ah, there we go. Okay, great. Thank you, Ray. That was a great handoff. It's like a news team here. Again, I think, and I know I do. I wish we had more than Ray, because I feel like I'm always pointing to poor Ray, who tries so hard to get good reception and get in on these conversations. But I tend to go back to that because there's a big difference between us in Canada or America talking about our safety and people in places like Indonesia talking about safety. And I think that I just want to make sure that's kind of always in the front of our minds and brought into the conversation whenever possible. We certainly don't want any harm coming to Ray, but at the same time, it would be disrespectful and patronizing of us to suggest that he can't be responsible for his own safety and take ownership of the decisions that he makes, regardless of what kind of risk that might put him in. So stay safe. We don't want Ray to get to disappear on us, but it's certainly also not in my. It's not my place to tell him that's too dangerous or whatever. So let's see. I wanted to move on to Courtney because she has some personal experience with the way people respond to these things. Courtney.
Yeah. So to kind of go off of Jesse's point about we know that it's a legitimate threat and we're doing it anyway. I write atheist children's books, and I have received legitimate death threats, like emails, phone calls, where people have my address and they've threatened to burn my house down with me and my son inside if I continue doing what I'm doing, if I don't pull my books from the shelf. And this is from Christians. This isn't from Muslims. So my question to Jesse and even people like him are, should I stop writing those books because I've received legitimate death threats? For me, it's like, how dare you tell me that what I do for the atheist community or for kids or whatever is wrong and threaten my life and my child's life because of it. I don't think that I should live in fear of something like that happening just because of what I do. And it's the same thing with abortion clinics. There's Christians bomb abortion clinics. Should they stop giving abortions to people because that threat is clearly there? And I understand, Makisha, your point, especially with Ray, and my heart goes out to Ray because I can't even imagine living in that every day. And I think that we do need to be sensitive to those situations, but for people like me who do live in America or North America, somewhere where we can be free, we can kind of take his voice in a safe way and do it. Like, we're able to draw Muhammad and really not fear too much of a big backlash as far as death threats or harm or anything like that because of where we live. But I think that, I kind of get the point where you need to watch what the majority is where you're at, because like Ray, if he would do it, he's really in a physical, like it could happen physically, violence could happen to him. So I kind of get that point. But for someone like me to tell me in America that I can't do it, it's like, why? Like, I'm able to do it. I don't have that fear, and I shouldn't live with that fear. And we need to show countries like Indonesia and Saudi Arabia and Iran that they don't have to fear it either. And I think that the more people do it in free countries, we're able to show the Muslim community that it really doesn't have to be as bad as what you're portraying it.
I'd like to give Jesse a chance to respond to some of the things that have been said. I do want to just point out that I don't think, and I'll let you speak to this, Jesse, I don't think Jesse was saying that we necessarily shouldn't. It sounded like he was speaking more to use caution. But Jesse, I want to give you a chance to respond.
Thank you. Yeah, exactly what Makisha said. I'm not saying that you should stop, but when you're saying that you're getting death threats from Christians, not to undermine their integrity or their follow-throughness, but they're more docile than Muslims would be. They're not the ones to fear in this case. In this case, what we're seeing is there are people here in this country, at least they're claiming they are, who are strategically placed around, who are ready for these exact moments when things like this happen. That's what I'm worried about. You know, the people in Bangladesh and Iran, you know, they're in a much more different situation. If they were to do it, they will be publicly taken out. I mean, they will be on the streets done this way. The biggest thing that I keep thinking to myself is we are activists, ultimately, not martyrs. If we die, we are now a martyr, and we're no longer able to, it'll be other people who will have to take our death and turn it into something else. I'm not saying at all that anyone should live in fear. I'm not saying anything. All I'm asking for is just to play it smart, ultimately. That's really what it boils down to, just because I don't want to be a martyr at all.
I have a question that, sorry, shifting my pillow. I have a kind of a devil's advocate point that, and this is something that I've heard and something that I would like to put to you guys and see what you guys have to say to this. It's one thing to risk your life to do something like, I don't know, save somebody else's life or get important medicine to cute children or something, save a litter of puppies. You know, it's one thing to go out there and throw yourself in front of a bullet. This is drawing a picture of Muhammad. It's like you're doing something that doesn't really do anything. It doesn't. What does it do? What exactly are you doing except pissing people off? I mean, if you're writing atheist books for kids, and they're probably all really cute kids who have puppies, you know, that's important work. Like that's what you should stand up and take a death threat for, not drawing a picture of Muhammad and kind of being an asshole about it. So that's something. Ali is like choking it down there. So that's something I've heard. You know, come on, guys. Like you're just being mean. Just like this is nothing. This is just, and this does kind of come back to the being mean thing. You're not actually doing anything that has any meaning, even in an atheist context. What would you all say to that? And I'm going to start with Ali because I think she might just explode if I don't let her talk. So Ali, go ahead.
Okay, so something that Jesse said about martyrs. Atheism needs no martyrs. And that's what's so fantastic about being an atheist. We don't have anything to stand for, to die for, or anything of that nature. So as far as atheism is concerned, atheism needs no martyrs. Religion demands it. But we do have different rights and things that we do like to stand up for. So like you were saying about Courtney. Courtney does a great job. She's getting a message out to children, which is phenomenal. That would be something to stand up and die for. Something else Jesse said, that Christians aren't a huge danger, something along those lines. They blow up abortion clinics. They can outrageously be very, very defensive of their beliefs, and they can definitely take that to violence. So I wouldn't dare say that a Christian fighting for their life is any, or their rights or their beliefs is any less dangerous than a Muslim for theirs. And then something Makisha was saying about being mean. I think our society is so sensitive, and that might sound funny from people who actually know me because I'm such a nice person, and I really like being nice, and I think that if you're trying to build personal relationships with people, you absolutely should be nice. But being mean is fantastic. And I think that it's very important that people are mean. People learn lessons when people are mean. Take, for example, when you were in elementary school. Remember that stinky kid that sat in the back of class? Everyone in the class makes fun of him for being the stinky kid. Everyone runs from him at recess. Well, guess what? He goes home, he showers, he starts taking care of himself. It might not be the best way. People might not like it, but it gets a point across. Being mean is not bad. And I think that that's something that everyone, as a society, we really need to kind of re-embrace that. I did get a message from a Muslim asking me, because I said if I want to draw a picture of Muhammad screwing a pig, and I find that funny and you find that offensive, you know, there's two different emotions. I'm evoking two different emotions, and I think that's fantastic. As an artist, I love it. And he said, well, what if I drew a picture of your son getting a bullet in his head? Fantastic. I wouldn't like that at all. That's going to evoke different emotions in me. But if you find that funny, I'm not going to stop you from drawing that picture. Draw that picture. Be mean. I don't know what point you're trying to make with that, but go ahead. Make your point. Be mean. Let me sit back and observe my emotions and figure out why that's so important to me. So even if we were doing this just being mean, which we're not, but even if we were, that's not necessarily a bad thing, and it would still be something I'd stand behind.
Yeah, the whole mean thing is something. This would flow really nicely into a conversation about blasphemy laws and the difference between, you know, offense and being offended and all of those kinds of different topics, because it definitely speaks to that. We can sort of go into the whole conversation about social contracts, whether they're spoken or unspoken, is a very interesting one when it comes to religion. What we all sort of agree to do and not do, and then beyond that, how laws actually come from that notion that part of our responsibility as a human on this earth is to be generally kind and respectful. Where did the laws come from out of that belief? Where does that belief come from? Stuff like that. Because that all plays into this big time. Let's see. We've got Todd and whoever else you can write in our little chat on the side, and I'll put you in the queue that exists in my mind. So Todd, go ahead.
I pretty much agree wholeheartedly with Allie's point about being mean. You know, and she brought up a good illustration about the the sneaky kid in school and that kind of thing. That's, to me, that doesn't even really qualify as mean. Those are just simply social sanctions, and that's a fact about how societies work. We have formal sanctions, which are violations of law, and we have informal sanctions, which are, you know, group based. You know, in order to function in this group or function in these ways, these are the norms, and if you step outside of those norms, and there are those informal sanctions, you know, such as we'll say something to you that may feel hurtful, but we're not intending it to be hurtful. We're letting you know this is how this group functions, and everybody needs those reminders now and again. To me, and it comes back to the emotional point, and I think this is one of the reasons this is such a big deal, is because it's such an emotionally charged issue. Even the word mean is an emotionally charged issue. It is an emotional response to something that someone's saying. And whenever you have emotional attachments to beliefs, that's just part of being human. We all have emotional attachments to thoughts. They're not completely separable. But whenever you start pushing a little bit into the area that someone thinks is sacred, and you start questioning that, and you start maybe probing a little bit into things that they feel either can't be questioned, shouldn't be questioned, or that they haven't questioned enough to respond to, then those emotional responses come up. And I've seen it tons and tons in personal discussions and in debates and that kind of thing. If an honest question is posed, you know, then it's answered with a question. Well, why do you think it doesn't? You know, that's a defense. The word mean is a defense, and it's simply, and what that tells you is that the person that accuses you of being mean is having an emotional reaction to what you're saying. Being mean isn't anything that you can objectively quantify. And it doesn't even necessarily speak to the motive of the speaker. You could be just wanting to engage in an honest, open, respectful, rational discourse, and if you question enough, and if you push enough into an area that someone thinks is sacred and is hallowed ground, they're going to accuse you of being mean, and they're going to be emotionally defensive. And my whole thing is, if they get to that point, then fine, then we don't have to continue those discussions necessarily with that individual if they're uncomfortable doing it, because at some point it's going to break down, it's going to get into name calling, and everything like that. But whenever you go a step further and you say, if you're being mean, then I have the right to do this, then you're engaged in active assholery. And whether you have, you know, even if it's religiously or philosophically justified assholery, it's still assholery. And I don't, you know, I don't bear, you know, to me, I don't bear any responsibility for your assholification. And you know, that I'm just simply having a discussion. And so that's kind of where that whole mean thing lands with me. Is it's entirely subjective, and it's just an emotional response to an uncomfortable question. So the accusation doesn't really hold any water, because it doesn't really have any merit. All it tells you is about the mental state of the speaker. It tells you nothing about the motives, the intent, or anything of the person that's doing the questioning or being provocative, so to speak.
Assholification. Ass hattery. That's great. The only person who can know if they're being mean is the person who's doing it. So I can know if my intention is to hurt your feelings. That would be mean. If my intention is solely to hurt your feelings, that's mean. Only I can know if that's being mean. I also don't like the word nice. I don't like nice. I don't like mean. I don't think those words actually have a whole lot of value. They don't really speak to anything of substance. And so that's why those conversations tend to get really hard, because it's like, what do you mean? Do you mean that I'm being intentionally provocative? That I'm intentionally pissing people off? Well, intentionally pissing people off has a huge role to play in society in general. Just because this happens to be religious, and it happens to be a particular religion that some of us are a little afraid of right now, doesn't really hold a lot of water. That shouldn't have any more weight than any other reason why we piss people off, or any other reasons. So those are all really good points, and I like that you touched on that whole mean thing. It's frustrating. And we got assholification out of it, which I say is a gold star day. So Armin has some things to say. I think he's probably been holding them in his brain for a while, so we'll let him unmute himself.
I've been keeping notes about things I want to touch on. One thing I want to first say is, when people say that this is not, there's nowhere in the Quran that says you shouldn't draw Muhammad, people should stop saying that, because the vast majority of Muslims, except a very few minority groups, believe that Islamic laws don't just come from the Quran. They come mostly from the Quran and the Hadith. So just because something is not in the Quran doesn't mean it's not Islamic law. In fact, Hadith is as authoritative as the Quran, and as Muslims take it, it has basically the same amount of authority as the Quran. Everything that is considered authentic Hadith is basically Islamic law. However, we have to be careful, because there's a lot of disagreements about which Hadith are actually authentic and which ones are not. Makisha just pointed out in the chat room, people don't know what Hadith is. Hadith is just basically the sayings and the life of Muhammad, and basically using what Muhammad said and how he lived as an example, as a way of life, and using it as basically, if Muhammad gave an advice during his life, even if it wasn't in a Quranic verse, it becomes hadith, and you could use it to create Islamic law. So the Quran is not just, you can't summarize everything about Islam into the Quran. So I just wanted to point that out, and I want to also point out to the people that say, what does this accomplish? Because we have to let's be a little bit fair to our critics, the people that are against drawing this, because they're not all the same. So to me, there are three groups: people that think it's okay to use violence against drawing Muhammad, and most of the people that talk to us, they're not that group. I mean, they're so far off down the scale of argument that we're not even in this discussion. We're not I mean, we do try to reach out to them, but in this discussion, we're not even talking to them, the people that think it's okay to use violence. There are people, but then the rest, the two other groups, there are people that think that this should be banned. We shouldn't be able to draw Muhammad, and there are people in the liberal, among liberals that agree with that. And I think a lot of you guys did a great job at addressing, responding to them. One thing I want to ask those people is that, okay, so a lot of atheists and Christians find the Quran offensive. Should we use the same argument to ban the Quran as well? And if we don't ban the Quran because we find it offensive, why are we not banning the Quran? Is it because we're not killing people because we find it offensive? And if we're not banning the Quran because we're not killing people, what message does that send? Does that send a message that killing works? So basically we're telling the world that if you want to get shit banned, you can't argue for it. You need to kill people for it. So if I find the Quran offensive and you're not banning it, and they find the Quran our cartoons offensive and they're successful at getting it banned, we're basically sending a message to everywhere in the world. That's how you get your message across. That's what works. So when this goes back to the safety thing, so I think basically us not drawing cartoons is actually more dangerous because it rewards the people that are using violence. But I think the third group of our critics are the people that see eye to eye with us the most, but still are against drawing cartoons. And I think we need to be careful not to group them with those two other groups, because they get frustrated when we do group them. And these are the people that think we should be free to draw Muhammad cartoons. There shouldn't be any laws against it, but they're just advising against us doing it. They're saying it's not effective, it's not helpful. And I will say why I disagree with them, but I just think that when we are when we're responding to them, we shouldn't group them with the people that think we should ban these things. These are people that are also in full support of freedom of speech and against any kind of regulations, against any kind of expression. But they're just thinking that what we're doing is just not a good idea. They just want to talk us out of it. They think, like you guys say, they think they need to be more, we need to think about what we're doing, we need to think about the consequences, we need to think about how are we being just mean to people, are we just offending people for the sake of offending them because they find it offensive. The thing is that there probably are some people that draw cartoons just because they want to offend people, but this wouldn't have picked up this much, if that was the only point. There's other ways to be, piss people off. But the reason why this movement has become a big deal and it has is because the people that are getting offended. It's not just about being offended. If these people were like, if the Muslims that were offended by these cartoons were like, you know what, I'm offended by this, so I'm going to stop looking at it, then there would be no, people are allowed to be offended. There's no rules against being offended. People should feel free to be offended as much as they want. But they can't demand censorship because they are offended. They should be in a position that they could control the content that they're exposed to. But if they come to the places where their content exists and they didn't have to, and then they're complaining, then that makes no sense. We have a right to freedom of speech. We don't have the right to an audience. If I go in a public area or in my area, in my own environment, among my private place, and talk about why, for example, I think I lack belief in a God, that's totally fine. Nobody can shut me up. But if I all of a sudden go inside a church where I'm not welcomed and then go at the altar and start yelling to everybody like, you're all fools, there's no God, they have every right to kick me out. That's not, I'm not welcome there. That's their private area. Freedom of speech does not mean that you have a right to an audience. So as long as we're not forcing our content on people, as long as they have an option to opt out of seeing our content, them taking offense over something should not be able to be used as a way for them to regulate what we share in our environment. And so a lot of people say, well, why can't you just communicate that instead of, actively, demonstrating it? Well, the thing is, demonstrating it doesn't stop us from talking about it. You could do both. And demonstrating things have always worked, has been always very effective. When people, it's interesting when people don't claim this when you do it to Christianity. When people are in the West, when Christians in the West are trying to limit gay rights, and you have gay couples going out and kissing each other in public, and which is something that a lot of these far-right Christians find very offensive. All these liberals, they are like, yeah, like show those like crazy right-wing Christians that they can't do anything. Like, but they find you kissing each other offensive. Why are you go inside your home and kiss each other? Why are you doing it in public? Because it's a public space. They don't get to control a public space. They could talk about it forever, but it would have never gotten the amount of attention that it did if they didn't, kiss in a public space. When every other straight couple could do kiss in a public space, why can't gay people kiss in a public space? And again, and also when Muslims do that to other Muslims, Muslim activists, liberal Muslim activists do that to traditional Muslims. We also find that the liberals find it encouraging. For example, in Turkey, when they were trying to regulate alcohol, when they were trying to ban alcohol, a lot of liberal Muslims came out with their bottles and their drinks, and they started drinking. There was like an army of people outside with their drinks. And a lot of traditionalist Muslims, they found that very offensive. But again, the liberals find that a very effective way of demonstrating that you can't just force your rules on us. And it was very effective. You could still have dialogue with people. People say, like, if you offend people, then they're not going to have a dialogue with you. Well, that hasn't been the case. In fact, if you look at what's happening, most of a lot of Muslims that were not willing to have any discussions about these things are now having discussions about these things, because now they feel before they were just ignoring it. They were like, this is just how it is. You can't do it. But now that we can show that no, this is not how it is, now they're trying to actively participate in discussions and make their case. So it is actually encouraging dialogue. So and another interesting thing is that most people don't know this, but there are Muslims that are actually in full support of us drawing Muhammad, and they feel, but we don't hear about them because they would get a much bigger backlash from their own Muslim community than we would. And these demonstrations has actually encouraged some Muslims to come out and express, like, you know what, I'm a Muslim, it's wrong for me to draw Muhammad, but I can't expect a non-Muslim to follow my rules. And they're saying that. Their voices are not being heard. There's not that many of them, but I suspect there's more of them that are just scared to say that. But the reason why now we're hearing a little bit more about these people is because during the Paris demonstrations after the shootings, you saw Muslims right next to everybody else holding the signs about protecting freedom of speech. Now you see in the United States there was this Muslim group that came out and was saying that they think that everybody should be able to draw whatever the hell they want. And you would have never heard about these people if these Draw Muhammad Day cartoons wasn't such an active thing. One thing I want to mention about this safety issue, okay, if you are a lot of ex-Muslim activists in Islamic countries are always trying to get more support from atheists in Western countries. They're always trying to, get us focus a little bit, maybe not just always Christianity. Look at their situation over there, maybe because they're in a situation where they can't talk, and we're in a place where we can talk. and they would like us to use our freedom of speech to give voice to their causes. And they have been trying very hard to reach out to more and more atheists and get more atheists to speak out. Yet, the safety is much bigger an issue for them than it is for us, and they are taking risks every day. And for us, when we draw Muhammad, the amount of risk that we're taking is actually very small. Statistically, you're taking a much bigger risk every time you get into a car. I mean, if you look at the numbers in the West, the risk is very low. And I think, given that the risk is low for us, it's worth us lending our freedom of speech to some people that need it in other places. And when they look at our situation here, and they see that in a country where there is freedom of speech, Muslims are actually becoming successful at getting people to shut up about things that offend Muslims, they become very discouraged that we will ever go and speak against Islamic laws in their countries. They say they're even scared to say it where they're protected by law. They feel abandoned. And another thing about safety issues, a lot of these terrorist groups that do end up killing somebody because they draw Muhammad, these are like sleeper cells that weren't, okay, now we need to do something because somebody drew Muhammad. They were like, we need to one day do something, and then when they eventually do something, say let's say, okay, what's around? Who's offending us so that we could kill? They were always gonna do that. They had planned that sleeper cell years in advance. They were there to eventually carry out an attack. It's not like if you didn't draw a cartoon, they wouldn't come out. They would have found something else to do. They need to. The point. The terrorist groups are not like, let's attack people so they don't draw Muhammad. No, they're like, we need to advertise our brand. We need to advertise the Al-Qaeda brand or the ISIS brand. So we need to kill somebody so we get media attention. So more people, so more young Muslim jihadists think that we're the top dog here, and we're the jihadi group to join if you are going to join a group. So that's their goal. They know. The terrorist groups, they might be religious fanatics, but they're not stupid. They have strategies. They know what they're doing. They know this is not going to stop people from drawing Muhammad. So they're gonna carry out their killing. Our message is not to the terrorists that, hey, look, we're gonna keep drawing Muhammad, so stop doing terrorist attacks. Our message, if terrorists don't, they don't care what we're telling them. Their agenda is completely different about these old freedom of speech things. We're trying to reach out to Muslims that are trying to regulate freedom of speech. The point is not that you shouldn't take offense. The point is, take offense, and if you can show that we're coming to your environment without permission and exposing you to content that you don't want, then we have committed an offense. But if you are coming to our environment and then claiming that we should shut up, even if they were doing that and they were not successful at it, still this event wouldn't make sense. If people were taking offense and they were saying that we should shut up about it, and nobody was listening to them, these Mujahid Muhammad Day cartoons would not make any sense. But they are actually achieving this. They are actually getting people to watch what they're saying, and based on other people's sensibilities. And because they're getting successful at it, that's why we need to draw attention to this. One last thing before I let other people speak. Another thing to people that are against this because they think it serves no purpose, many of the people that are actually against this have went and studied what rights do we have, what rights don't we have, and been engaged in a lot of these discussions about, how they listen to debates, and so even among people that are against these draw mama cartoons, they have actually gained a lot more knowledge. They have studied this in a lot more detail. So I think as a community as a whole, everybody have a much better understanding of their rights simply because of these events. So I can't imagine any more effective way of achieving all these goals. We have shown the number one achievement that we have, the main achievement that we have shown that, you don't even have to guess if this is effective. You could see, when in Denmark the cartoons came out, so many Muslims got angry, so many businesses got burned, so many people got killed. Not talking about the terrorists, talking about the masses of people, both in Muslim countries and in Europe, that's reacted to this. And but eventually, when so many more cartoons were drawn, like look at until we had like the Paris, look how much things shifted. The Muslim community realized that this is not how you can control content. It doesn't work. And the reason why they have realized that it doesn't work, and the reason why they're not reacting to it as much as the terrorists react to it as much as the same way they did before, but the Muslim community is not reacting to it as much as they did before, because they have seen that not only it does not work, it actually makes people want to express the speech that you're trying to limit more. So we have been successful. So you only have to look at the record to see how effective it has been. You don't even have to theorize about it. Anyways, I'm going to end my rant here.
I think that it is important to, and I want to just kind of go back. Oh, I just generated a funky little curl here. I think I want to just touch again on something that Armin said, that historically, even an act that doesn't appear to have a direct line to some sort of desired outcome generates other behaviors and other activity that does ultimately go toward that desired outcome. So, and we know that especially now, anything visual, anything kind of, for lack of a better way of putting it, in your face, provocative, quick, short, to the point kind of stuff is going to generate ongoing conversation if it is worthy of gaining traction. If the public is grabbing onto it, that thing is going to trigger all of the other things that are ultimately going to have some sort of lasting outcome. So again, and I'll be one of the people in the room to say, I have not visited that thread in the group. I don't look at the cartoons. I don't participate in that conversation. It's not my thing. It's not what I do. That's just not me. I think all of those people, absolutely, just like Armin said, I'm one of the people who doesn't participate in that. It's not really what I would want to do, but I believe that it should be able to happen. It should be safe. It should be protected under freedom of speech. And I can say that it does something. It has a desired effect. It gets people talking. And from an atheist perspective, it puts Muslims in a position to have to say, okay, wait a sec, where is this coming from? Like, what, they have to respond. They have to, in some way, they have to respond. They have to either explain why this is so offensive, why, if it's offensive to you, why does that mean that I can't do it? I'm not coming up and tacking up cartoons on your holy buildings or, shoving them in your face, so why is it so bad for me to do that? They're being put in a position to have to respond to that. They should be okay. That should be good for them. I mean, I would think they would be happy about that. They're being called up by media outlets left and right saying, do you have a response? Do you want to, talk to this atheist who's saying this thing? I mean, that should be great for them. And then from an atheist perspective, it's great for us because it brings the facts to light. It brings freedom of speech to light, which is the most important thing that we're talking about right now. And like Armin said, the fact that you don't have a right to be protected from offense. That's not how human rights works. That's not how freedom of speech works. And the fact that Islam has somehow become a holy grail all of a sudden that we're not supposed to touch or have a conversation about, or poke or provoke in any way, that we need to keep coming back to that, because that's not the fact that the world right now is setting Islam up as some sort of thing that we're not supposed to piss off. That should concern us greatly, and it should be something that worries us all. That we're just sitting here and saying, "Oh no, not that." We can tease the Christians because they don't have bombs, but and that should make us profoundly uncomfortable when we start going down that road. So as much as I am all for polite conversation, and I think actually this leads to polite conversation. This leads to me asking my Muslim friends, what the fuck? Can you explain this to me? Can we have a conversation about this right now? And I like you, and you like me, and we're cool. So can we talk about this? Because I don't get it. Like those conversations are happening, and I think that is important, and I think it's great. And I think if all it is a bunch of bratty teenagers posting offensive illustrations of Muhammad, it would just fizzle and die, and everybody would chalk it up to another one of those weird things that goes on in the internet. But it's not. It's just not. That's the reality. So we can sit here and talk about, I think Todd mentioned it as well, we can sit here and talk about what we feel about it. It feels uncomfortable. It feels mean. But if we're looking at quantitative analysis of what is this actually accomplishing, what's happening here, what's going on, that's the conversation I think we need to be having, and we need to keep bringing it back around to that, not just, I feel that this is maybe not okay, because that's, that doesn't really mean anything to me. So that's my conclusion in 2 cents. We are now 24 minutes over our time, which is great. This has been such a good conversation. I want to give other people a chance, because I don't want to have the last word. I want to give other people a chance to maybe respond to Armin or any thoughts that you have before we wrap up. And we'll probably have to have another conversation about blasphemy and stuff sometime. Anybody else? Courtney.
Yeah, I just kind of wanted to add on to something that Allie had mentioned, that if someone wanted to draw a picture of them shooting her child, that, yeah, it's not going to be comfortable for her, but that's their right to do it. I think that the way that this contest is made up, there's not going to be any pictures like that. There's just going to be pictures of Muhammad. Nobody's going to be doing anything violent to him. It's not going to be any precarious situations. It's literally like a portrait, of the face of Muhammad, or even, his body or whatever. So I think that to be offended over something so simple as just drawing a face is a little bit, that takes it to the nth degree, that it does show their arguments are ridiculous. And I think that more people need to see this argument, and to go back to Armin's point about, we are the voice for the people that don't have a voice. And like how he said, if people in free countries can't draw Muhammad just to draw him, then they have no hope over there. They're trying to get basic rights, and here we are. We can't even get Islam to be quiet about something that's really quite stupid. And in my view, I think it's stupid to not want, not allow the Prophet Muhammad to be drawn. So, he brings up a really good point about that, but I just kind of wanted to add that, and then that's it.
Thank you, Courtney. Anybody else have any last? Jesse, yes.
Just to kind of tack on with what Armin was saying, basically, one thing I want to just kind of remind everyone is, when people are offensive, generally people clam up. You know, they'll kind of close off, they'll shut their doors, they will not listen anymore. Look at the civil rights movement in the 1960s. That was done without offense. If we are actually hoping to change something in these other countries, help to inspire people, why don't we try to encourage the way that they did it in the 60s with the civil rights movement? Why does offense have to be the main dialogue for this? I mean, that's my question. I'm more of a peaceful person, you know. I'm a lover, not a fighter. You know, it's just my way of doing things. So it's a little hard for me to just. I understand every reason. I understand, and you know what? Some of the arguments are great. I just want to make sure that we don't get ourselves and set a precedent that will become the narrative for the next 50 years, where offense is the only way to stop tyranny or other form of offensive material, or because I mean ultimately what they're doing to atheists and to other people of religions, it's offensive too. So it's a double-edged sword, and I understand that. I'm just saying, is there not a more level-headed, non-offensive, something that someone like me could do to truly make a difference?
I'm so conflicted right now. I really, okay, so I'm just going to say what I would like to see happen, and then you guys can all sort of decide what you want to do. I actually need to go anyway because I have limited time that I can be on these live chats. I really think that the issue of offense and how we handle and how we talk about these things is so important, and it's a conversation that comes up again and again within our communities, and I would really love to have that as a separate thing because I don't want this to get buried. I don't want this to just be a tack on at the end of another really, really great conversation. We could obviously go a whole other hour about this, and I would love to. I would love to do it next week because I think it's a great standalone topic that I want us to devote to without feeling like it's an afterthought. And an hour is a lot to watch of a YouTube video, and I hope that people have watched this far. But I'm afraid that if we continue this conversation and address the things that Jesse said, which are so good and such great questions, I'm afraid they're going to get buried. So that's my thing. You all can keep talking, and somebody else can moderate if you want to respond to Jesse's comments or questions, and then we can still go next week or whatever. I will leave that to the group. Also, we will be providing links to the contest, making sure that everybody knows where to find this, where to post your drawings, anything else, comments, feedback on that is great. We'll probably turn this into a newsletter if somebody would like to write about it. You can email that to us, and maybe we'll turn that into a newsletter. Add your questions and comments to our website, and obviously visit our Facebook page and our website anytime for more of this. So everybody, can we maybe end this now and take the offense thing next week? Am I getting thumbs up about that? Okay, great. Because I really do want to talk about it. I think we can get some good diverse perspectives on that as well. I know I have some personal views on that that I would love to share, and I'd love to hear other people's perspectives. So I'm going to shut it down unless anybody really wants something. They can wave at me really loud. Otherwise, I'm going to say thanks, everybody, for joining us this week. This was phenomenal. I hope to have more really great, thoughtful, intelligent conversations like this as we move forward. Thanks for joining us today, and we hope you join us next week. Thanks, guys.
I just also want to say, just check out the description of the YouTube video for this, just emphasize that. I know Mike said that, for the link to the Dry Muhammad Day contest. Submit your own drawings, and we'll post them on the page.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody. Have a great week.